Thank you.
Horseback ride rider. Horseback.
Horseback ride rider.
Horseback rider.
Horseback
rider. Hi, I'm Kayla.
And I'm Pete, and welcome to How I Hobby.
We're two pals and hobby obsessives with over 100 hobbies between us.
And we're always on the lookout for more.
Join us as we talk about all of our hobbies.
And talk to people we know about their really cool hobbies.
Welcome to How I Hobby. In today's episode, we've got a great interview with Narie Foster, whose hobby weaves an interesting narrative. But first, Pete, how do you hobby?
I'll tell you how I hobby.
Tell me.
I do horse riding.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
It was purely on a whim.
Okay, like many hobbies.
Like most of my hobbies, it was just, I fancy giving that a go.
Neat.
Yeah.
When did you do this?
The last time I did it was quite a while ago. It's one of those things that it does cost a fair bit, which means I can't do it as often as I would like. It's definitely a treat if I have a windfall of some sort. I think, do you know what? I think I'll have a little horse riding day.
When
it's great.
When did you get into this, Pete?
This was, oh my word, this must have been about 10 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
I haven't done it since COVID.
Wow.
But it's one of those things I'm like planning on getting, giving it another go when I get the time, when I get the money.
That's so cool.
It's a really fun thing to do. Now, there's lots of people I know who are into it, like properly into horses, and that's what they do. And they're into like mucking out and sorting out the tack and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I am literally the sort of guy who will just turn up at a stable and give them some money and say, "Can I have a horse, please?" And then get talked around a thing, or maybe go on a hack or something like that.
Oh, cool.
I'm not confident enough to like just go out on my own, or anything like that. But I'll have like a day's experience or a lesson or something like that. And the reason why I enjoy it so much is because it's weirdly meditative.
Okay.
When you are sat atop this 12-ton beast and you're about, 8 foot off the ground, you can't really worry about anything or any of your problems or think about your day-to-day because you're trying to keep this thing under control.
Yeah.
And then once you get into it and you relax into it, and it is just very, very meditative. It's kind of it's kind of thing. So you are concentrating on the actual riding side of it, and distract you from your day to day.
Oh my God! At your peak, Pete. Wow, that's so many P's. At your peak, Pete. How often were you going?
Not often. I said, this is some hobbies that I count as hobbies that are things that I can do on the occasions when I have the money, I have the time, the stars align, and I think, do you know what, I'm going to do that.
That's
and
cool.
I had to get to grips with this because
it's an indulgent hobby.
It's an indulgent hobby. And I think a lot of our listeners have said this, that when they've asked, how do you deal with having so many hobbies? And I've had to sort of allow myself to let some of them sit on the shelf and not feel guilty about it. Do you ever feel guilty about, oh God, I haven't really done that for ages? Yeah. But there's some hobbies that I feel are like, just when you can and when you want to, when you feel like, then you can just take it off the shelf, give it a go.
Yeah, that's cool.
Then put it back on, which is totally fine. And this is one of those. I'm never going to be able to afford to do it regularly.
Yeah.
But it is something that I enjoy when I do it, and I will do it again. It's great fun.
Well, Pete, that's wicked.
Thank you.
Now to our episode. Narie Foster lives in New York and has a background in business, startups, and human behavior. She's the co-founder of a fashion brand and now advises and teaches entrepreneurs and facilitates intensive personal development workshops. Narie, tell us, how do you hobby?
Well, I hobby by doing live storytelling.
Cool!
Whoa! Oh, yes! Oh, this is brilliant. Very excited about this. This is very exciting.
Narie, tell us, what does it mean to do live storytelling?
Well, different things at different times. To be honest, it's been a couple of years, but I would say the best example, if anyone has heard of The Moth, it's a global organization that hosts storytelling nights. And there are many other versions of this throughout the world, but essentially kind of anyone can get on stage and tell a personal story. And often there are different rules. Maybe it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It'll just be kind of a completely different group of people telling stories. Then that has become a weird obsession for me.
Cool. And these stories, Narie, like, what's the topic? What's the length? Is it supposed to be funny? Is it supposed to be sad? Like, what does that storytelling look like?
Well, that's what's fun to me about storytelling is it can be quite a range. I originally actually started doing stand-up comedy, and I still do some of it sometimes, but I actually prefer the storytelling because while you can be funny, and certainly it will be more engaging if it's funny, there's so much more permission to go deep and to kind of get more into a story and to be a lot more personal. And I think that ends up doing really beautiful things. To me, it's like the goal is I want the audience to laugh and to cry, which maybe wouldn't happen at a stand-up comedy show as often.
Excellent stuff. I don't know, have people ever cried at your stand-up?
I mean, apart from me.
So I write stories as part of my composition. It involves a lot of storytelling in that. So, and I've wanted to make this into more of a live thing and to be able to actually sit down and telling a story. You can do it in text, no problem, but standing up and telling a story that holds the audience all the way through for 5-10 minutes, that's really exciting. So how did you get into this?
Well, it's funny you say that because I started with writing and then I was in a few writing classes where they just had us read aloud our pieces. And then I thought, oh, weirdly, I like this. This is actually very exhilarating. And it comes alive, and it made me kind of pickier about my writing. I was like, maybe I actually secretly want to be a performer, and it's just something I had never recognized or was never part of my identity before. But actually, it was from the writing that I started, really enjoying the getting on stage, being the center of attention again. Which is just like, if you ask my friend, it's been surprising to everyone involved, my family, my friends, that this is something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. So what have your family and friends, like, what do they think about this hobby of storytelling? How has that been received by them?
I would say mixed. Perfectly supportive, but I would say I think I've trained my parents to no longer be surprised when I do things. I would say, very supportive. It's been fun to bring friends who, again, have never seen me do anything like this and don't think of me as this kind of person. And then it ends up initiating really interesting conversation. And it's been a fun thing to start to share, even though actually when friends are in the audience, I tend to get way more nervous than if it's all
sure.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot of these stories, like, that it gives you a space where you can tell a story for you in your way that you wouldn't necessarily tell around the dinner table.
Exactly. When it's like the permission and the space, and then often there might be a theme or there's something that sort of gives the extra push to be more vulnerable, to be more, to tell kind of a more dramatic story. And I find that I don't like to be the life of the party, or I don't gravitate to that storytelling position in regular life, but to be given a mic and the audience bought tickets and sort of chose to do this suddenly, it just kind of opens up something else.
That's awesome.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Do you find that this is like maybe had an impact on other parts of your life? Like, are you more confident with speaking in business, in meetings and things like that? Or, how has it impacted the rest of your life?
I love that question. I've been thinking a lot about this because first of all, when I started with stand-up comedy, the main intention was, if I'm funnier, I will be more engaging in a business setting. And I teach and different things. And I was just like, I know that will help my career. And I signed up for that reason. Whereas storytelling is, I've almost intentionally made sure it's not for the sake of my other work, and kind of called it in my own, to myself, purely a creative exercise. And only now, actually recently, am I lifting my head up and starting to draw the connections, and absolutely. So now I do, maybe the number one is just like a sense of confidence and sort of like a comfort with attention. I think when people ask me even like, what's your career story? I would kind of, give the shortest, most humble version. And now I do feel myself like, actually there's more room for connection. There's more room for, understanding if I actually share more, and actually sharing becomes a gift as opposed to like a selfish, self-centered thing.
I love it. More room for a connection.
Yeah,
I
also,
love that.
not least because Narie is an extremely impressive human being with like so many freaking accomplishments under her belt. I'm wondering, Narie, so as you've embarked on this storytelling journey, right? Stand-up moved or has progressed, or in addition to stand-up, there's now storytelling, which doesn't have to be funny, the moth, etc. What is your favorite thing about storytelling as a hobby?
To me, there's so much power to both the human connection of it. So I would say, and every time I do this, right, I'm also in the audience for, it's, I don't know, 10 other performers, let's say, and to sit in the audience and to watch people reveal themselves, and then to also have the experience of doing it in that same night. I just go home like buzzing. And I find like even now, like a stranger on the street, my default is to assume that there's like something really endearing about them that I'm just like need to discover. And it's just like it's opened up, I don't know, like it's cheesy, but like a love of humanity. Yeah. And like everyone has a story, and everyone has like a very specific, special thing about them.
This may be my most exciting hobby so far. I'm absolutely loving this. This is absolutely great. But you mentioned there about sitting, with other storytellers and learning about them. What is the storytelling community like? The moth community like, or whatever? What is the what's the vibe there?
Despite liking to be on stage, I tend to get quite shy in kind of group community things, and so I usually enter and I tell the story and then I exit as fast as I can. And it's evolving, because once you're on stage, of course, it initiates conversations afterward, and I'm starting to realize how much the community element is it's part of the magic. And the conversations you can have with people who resonated with what you talked about, and vice versa. I've started going up to people and really telling them what I appreciated about their story.
Cool.
There's very much a just like extremely supportive community, and people will be vocal about what they appreciate and why it connected to them.
What is the profile of someone that does storytelling, right? Like, some people, I'm assuming, come at it because they're already in a creative space. Some people maybe are business professionals. Like, what is the profile of a storyteller, Narie?
I found, so I took a few classes, and in the classes, it kind of like any classes along these lines, it's a mix of people who want to expand professionally, and maybe apply it to something like business or something else. And then there's people who are kind of already identify as performers, and they're expanding their performance portfolio. And I would say same maybe on the stage at the Moth, for example. It's probably like 50-50 people who are challenging themselves to tell a story for the first time, and it's like a huge stretch and the scariest thing they've ever done. And then, there's people who like clearly love the microphone and have done this 100 times. And it's actually really fun to see the range, and you really get all ages. You get all kinds of senses of humor, and very different storytelling styles, which it makes it more fun. So
you've talked a lot about connecting with yourself and connecting with the performative side and all this sort of thing. And this might not appeal to everybody who they don't want to go along and like have a whole night of hearing people's terrible stories and getting at, and essentially a big therapy session. But what can you tell me about like what you've learned about maybe the craft of storytelling, how to tell a story over 5 minutes?
Cool.
Yeah, good question. There's a few kind of key tenets of storytelling. One that I've always had trouble with is, you want to be sort of in the scene more than your versus sort of narrative and kind of going on about how it made you feel. Right, you just want like this happened and then this happened and here, and sort of appealing to the senses and help people kind of really enter the scene with you. That's a really important part of it. And then the other piece is kind of the stakes of it, right? To have kind of the story arc, and there are many different ways to do this, but to have there's a reason people care, and some sense of surprise or intrigue or just like what's going to happen, and to build that up early on and then kind of have a payoff later tends to be the most satisfying way to tell the story.
Yeah.
And then what's fun about that is to have to tell something that already happened in that format and sort of knowing that other people will witness it, right? Then you end up, just kind of like revisiting memories in new ways and drawing new connections. And
Sweet.
and it ends up kind of just like solidifying your actual past and your actual life.
I love that. What, because I mean, you're on this creative journey, right? And so you're pursuing more things that are creatively motivated. This, at the moment, storytelling sounds like it's something you would identify as a hobby, although you just made $50 from it, so that's really cool. So it's sort of transitioning, perhaps, to be revenue generating. How do you kind of see that evolution? Because I think to some people, loads of people we've had on the podcast, it's deliberate that their hobby is very different from how they make money. That's like a conscious choice. Really curious to hear from you, like you're on this, where you are on the spectrum and sort of how you see that evolution.
Yeah, I would say storytelling is not known to be
lucrative. Yeah.
Maybe at the highest level.
Sweet storytelling books coming in. Oh, what? Be like Scrooge McDucking into a pile of cash.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, and at the highest level, let's say you're writing for Hollywood or performing in Hollywood, right? Suddenly, there's that. But and I think for me, I come from a family that's always, and we've been very focused on financial security, and it actually, I noticed that it was a blocker for a long time. I sort of had these ideas of things that I wanted to do, but I just could not see how I could make the balance sheet work. So I actually, like, I wanted this, and I still maybe want it to be a primary focus and a career, even, to use that word, but I keep getting stuck on the financial side. So actually just letting it be a hobby, letting it be a creative adventure, has opened up a whole other thing. And I actually kind of believe, from that place of purely letting creativity drive it, actually more value can be created later. And you can sort of stumble into something that, I don't know, maybe makes money, or at least maybe sort of hits and resonates in a deeper way that leads to other opportunities that can become a job. But I've kind of just, like, the moment I called it that, right? Like, this is a creative endeavor and not necessarily like a career path. It's become freer. It's become more fun. I've taken more risks, and the pressure has been taken off.
That's awesome. And it really is. Like, we talked in season 1 to Izzy, and she was saying about how there's this pressure to make every hobby into like a side hustle, where you knit socks. Oh, well, great. You should put those on Etsy. Say, well, why can't I just knit? Leave me alone. What we'd like to know is, what has your hobby taught you about yourself and about life?
I mean, I could get really deep here. It's been a very a very deep experience, and I've studied in the world of personal development, and I teach workshops, and I've worked with coaches. I am a coach. I've had therapists, right? And I've read so many self-helpy type books. And so you could almost say another hobby is personal development. But to me, the storytelling has been a sort of better version of that than anything else, than any therapy, than any, any books, any philosophy, just both. Yeah. So I think I have gotten in touch with, like, childhood Narie in ways that I didn't, on a therapist's couch. I've certainly, my own identity has just become so much clearer, and it's still like part of the storytelling is digging around in that and kind of excavating more stories and more and drawing more connections. So sort of in a very broad sense, it's helped me, like, meet myself in a much deeper way, honestly, than anything else I've done. And then I think when I started this, I was terrified. I completely, wasn't sure if I could walk onto the stage. And
now you've won competitions.
Yeah.
And now, it's been a confidence booster, and not even when I'm not that proud of the story but it's just like, I did that. And it actually, and in the moment of being on stage, like not at all the before, but like once it begins, there's just like I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but yeah, there's like some sort of transcendence or like hyper presence. Almost like, I think of it like surfing, where it's like you're doing the whole day just for those like few seconds of like a good ride. And I've started to really feel that on stage, which has just been like completely surprising to me.
It's so cool.
Wonderful. Beyond
the Moth, like it sounds like that's the most famous kind of outlet for storytelling. Are there other kind of movements that you're a part of? Because you're in New York at the moment.
Yes. There are all these salons, different, cool. It's just like any person, of course, right, can just say, I want to host a storytelling night. Yeah. I've been in friends' backyards and friends' living rooms,
cool.
Or like interesting hotel bars where somebody puts on, it's music and it's storytelling, and certainly plenty of open mics that are broader than stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
It will be maybe music and storytelling and poetry and comedy in one. There's one that I performed at a few months ago in New York called Generation Women that I really loved, where they have a woman in her 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Oh, cool.
So each of those decades tell a story on a theme, and it ends up just being so special to see that range.
By the way, so Narie, Beyond the Moth is definitely the title of your autobiography.
Great.
Her retrospective. It's going to be at the Royal Academy. It's going to be multimedia.
Totally, Narie Foster, Beyond the Moth.
I love it. Narie, so your storytelling is one of your hobbies. You have a whole host of them. If money or time were no object, what other hobby do you think you'd pursue?
Ooh, good question. What comes to mind is singing.
Cool.
And I probably still will. I don't think it necessarily takes a lot of money to just sing.
No, you can do it for free.
Yeah.
It turns out. But I'm very insecure about my voice and my singing voice, and but I love music, and I've always like the most extreme jealousy I've ever felt is watching people sing. So I think I would like pay for the best singing coach in the world, and
Pete,
put a lot
Pete's
of time.
the best singing coach in the world.
I'm the best singing coach in this room.
That's true.
Is this the beginning of something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Making my dreams come true.
No, bro, I would be delighted to. You can give me storytelling tips in the meantime, because I'm totally going to try this hobby.
Yeah, I feel like you would like it.
I would love it.
Yeah.
This sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Narie, we've got one last big question. You've got 30 seconds to convince us. Why should people try your hobby?
Pitch us. Yeah, pitch us.
Well, it sounds like you don't need any. It sounds like you're already convinced. Anyone can be a storyteller. Everyone has stories to tell. All that it requires is you to like show up as yourself and with honesty, and that exercise in itself will teach you more about yourself and create more like connection with other people than you ever thought was possible. And facing that fear of getting on stage and in this community, it ends up being very, it feels very safe and feels very welcoming to do that in that space. Will just like in one night kind of hurdle you over fears and personal blocks. It just is like this beautiful, warm, fuzzy feeling. And you will be so proud that you tried it. And yeah, and it's exhilarating and so much fun.
I love it.
Fantastic.
That was brilliant. Narie, that was so cool. What I loved about what you shared with us is that this hobby has helped you learn more about yourself. And I think that we've heard, elements of that from some of the other guests that we've had. You know, it helped them see that they can push themselves faster or push themselves more. It helped them sort of meditate and not think about work as much. Like those are all kind of things that people learn about themselves. But you've definitely learned the most like holistic and like depth, not only like breadth, but also depth about yourself, which is so, so cool. And I also love this like thing about like everyone has a story to tell because it feels like that's also part of what we're trying to get with this podcast is like you're able to tell your story. We've had 8 people in season 1 talk about their story. Like everyone has multiple permutations of stories in them that like could be bottled and released to the world. And I think that is so cool.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to be a famous celebrity to have an interesting story to tell.
Yeah,
and, you know.
In fact, it's more interesting, right? It's almost more interesting to hear a story of somebody that you relate to and doesn't feel like, like a god on, in a different universe. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're just like me, and you're going through the same thing. And,
totally agree.
It doesn't have to be super dramatic even. It's just, but if you're just being honest about it, it's amazing how compelling it is.
Yeah.
Love it. I've absolutely loved this. This has been great.
Narie, tell us, where can we find you on socials?
Yes. I recently made my Instagram public in the interest of broadening my storyteller horizons.
Great.
So I'm at Narie Foster.
Yeah, we will put in the show notes. No prob.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No prob. Narie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about your very cool hobby.
Yes.
It has been so fun to chat and hear about storytelling. And you've already converted one person.
I mean,
here.
I was just there. You just needed that little push, but that just sounds absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
You'll have to let us know so we can watch.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll be in touch.
All right. Toodles.
All right. See ya. That was our interview with Narie Foster. We had a blast. Hope you did too.
But before we go, we want to share this week's celebrity hobby. Drum roll.
Did you know Angelina Jolie is into knife throwing?
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like Laura Toom Raid Hunter. Oh,
you okay?
Shit.
Laura Toom Raid Hunter. That's
Laura...
exactly the one. Okay.
Lara Croft.
That's the one,
Tomb Raider. I don't know if we can use this.
Oh, we're definitely using that.
Laura?
Let's move on.
Okay. And that's a wrap.
I've been Pete.
And I've been Kayla.
Rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes us much easier to find.
And follow us on Instagram at howihobby.
Did you know we also have a newsletter?
I did. Subscribe for new episodes and behind the scenes chat.
See you next time.
Toodles.
How I Hobby was written and produced by Kayla Lean and Pete Falconer, with music and editing by Pete Falconer, artwork by Laura Walsh, and animation by Kayla Lean. If you'd like to be featured on the show, email us at howihobby@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at howihobby, or sign up to our mailing list at howihobby.com.